My stepsons joked that I'm a bank that finally ran dry. I collected the contracts, canceled every card, and handed the bills to their mom. When the lights went out, they finally remembered who paid for them. Don't forget to subscribe and share your experiences below. Let's get started. I was 45 when I married Helen. Old enough to know better. Old enough to tell myself that love could still mean something, even after life had sanded the edges off everything I was. I didn't come with fireworks. I came with a work van, a bad back, and 2 decades of climbing ladders in the rain. Electrician by trade. Provider by instinct. That's who I was. That's who I still am. Helen had been raising her boys alone since they were toddlers. Luke and Noah, 16 and 14 when I met them. Their biological father had disappeared years earlier. No birthday calls. No weekend visits. Not even a Facebook like. Just a ghost. Gone into the wind with his new family, somewhere far enough that sorry no longer applied. When Helen said the boys needed stability, I thought I knew what she meant. Rules. Structure. A hand steady on the wheel. But what she really meant was money. And I had it. Not in stacks or luxury, but in steady paychecks. Enough to cover the mortgage, the sports fees, the latest phones, and a vacation once a year where everyone could pretend we were something close to whole. I moved into their house, their walls, their memories. I told myself I was building something new, not trying to replace the past. I wasn't their father. I didn't ask for that title. I didn't even want it. I just wanted to be respected, seen. Instead, I became the background. The first time Luke called me the wallet, I laughed. Thought it was teenage sarcasm, some slip of the tongue. Mom's ATM, he said, bragging on the phone to a friend. She found a guy who pays for everything. Then he added, like it was the punchline to some private joke. He even thinks we like him. Noah wasn't better. He had a quiet kind of cruelty, the kind that hides behind fake politeness. Can you fix my charger? He'd ask. Thanks, man, he'd mutter afterward, voice flat, eyes already turned away. He never once called me by name. Not Jonathan. Not John. Just man, like I was a stranger walking through his space, tolerated but never welcomed. Helen would smile, say I was imagining it. Teenagers are rough, she'd whisper when I came to bed at night, her back already turned to me. Give it time. But time didn't make it better. Time made them bolder. They took, and I gave without hesitation. Every bill, every meal, every ride to practice, every forgotten textbook that needed to be picked up last minute. I was there. I never asked for thanks. I never asked for love. I just hoped one day they'd see me. I remember buying Luke his first phone under my name. He dropped it a week later, screen shattered. No apology. Just a grunt and a demand for a new one. Just charge it to your card, he said, not even looking up from the game he was playing. When I told him he needed to wait until payday, he scoffed. Jesus, what good are you if you're broke? I said nothing, just nodded and left the room. I worked longer hours to keep up, took weekend jobs, missed birthdays just to pay for them. I skipped my own meals to afford theirs. When Luke needed braces, I drained my savings. When Noah wanted to go on a school trip to DC, I put it on a credit card I wasn't sure I could pay off. I kept telling myself this is what real men do. They provide. But I wasn't a father in their eyes. I was an employee, a bank that didn't charge interest, a utility that kept the house warm. They made jokes at the dinner table about me being a backup, a stand-in. One night Luke said, if you ever quit, Mom can always hire another one. Right, Mom? Helen didn't laugh. She didn't scold him either. She just stirred her soup and looked out the window like the world outside was more important than the one at our table. That's when I started feeling the shift. Not in them, in me. I began to hear my own voice disappear from the rooms I paid to heat. I noticed how they never asked me how my day was. How Helen never defended me unless it cost her comfort. How the boys would say we when they meant her and me when they meant themselves, but never us. We were never an us. They gave nothing back. No affection, no effort, no acknowledgement, just demands wrapped in entitlement. And Helen, she let it happen. Maybe she thought I could take it. Maybe she thought I didn't need kindness. That my purpose was simply to absorb the blows so they didn't have to. One evening, Noah had a group of friends over. I had come home from a 14-hour shift, exhausted, boots still on, stomach empty. I heard him through the wall, his voice proud, full of bravado. "This place? Mom's boyfriend pays for it. He's loaded or something. Does all the boring stuff. He's like furniture but with a credit limit." They laughed. All of them, like it was the best line in the world. I didn't confront him. I just sat in my car with the engine off and my hands on the wheel. I stared at the dashboard until the windows fogged. I told myself it wasn't worth it, that it was just talk. But it wasn't. It was truth sharpened into mockery. I wasn't a person in this house. I was a function. Still, I kept giving. Because giving was all I had left. I took them to Disneyland. 3 days in the summer heat, waiting in lines, carrying bags, holding water bottles. Luke didn't look up from his phone. Noah complained about the food. Helen took photos and posted them with captions like, "Best family ever," as if hashtags could disguise the rot underneath. When I asked Luke if he was enjoying himself, he shrugged. "I mean, it's not like you built the place." And then he laughed. I slept on the edge of the hotel bed that night, facing the wall. Helen didn't ask what was wrong. She just scrolled through her phone, smiling at comments from friends who didn't know what silence tasted like. By the time fall came, I was still buying groceries, still paying the electric bill, still filling the gas tank. But inside, something had started to flicker. A slow, dangerous kind of awareness. That I could vanish tomorrow, and the only thing they'd miss was the money. And even that, only until someone else stepped in. I thought about my father. A welder who drank too much and hugged too little. He never gave me much, but at least when he was gone, he stayed gone. I was doing the opposite, staying and being invisible. Is that better? I wasn't so sure anymore. Then came the day I found Luke's browser open on the kitchen laptop. He'd left it running. A chat window was open. His friend had asked how he got the new console. Luke's reply, "Mom's ATM paid off again." Just like that. Punchline. Not Jonathan bought it. Not my stepdad. Not even the guy who lives with us. Just a label. A machine. I stood there staring at the screen. My heart didn't race. My fists didn't clench. There was no rage. Just stillness. The kind that settles in when the lie you've been telling yourself finally dies. That was the moment I knew. Not guessed. Not suspected. Knew. I wasn't building a family. I was funding one. And families, real ones, don't mock the hand that feeds them. That night I came home with takeout. I set the table. I didn't say a word. Neither did they. They took the food, ate, and left. No thanks. No conversation. Just wrappers left for me to clean up. I stood alone in the kitchen, the fridge humming like it knew something I didn't. My hands were shaking. My knees ached. And I realized the boys had never once said thank you. Not for the phones. Not for the vacations. Not for the roof over their heads. Not once. I looked around that kitchen and understood. I had mistaken transactions for connection. Provision for presence. I had built my own prison one invoice at a time. And nobody cared. That's where it began to die. Not with a scream. Not with a fight. But with silence. And silence, I've learned, is more dangerous than hate. It happened on a Wednesday, that quiet middle of the week, where nothing ever feels final. Where people go to work, come home, scroll through their phones, eat dinner, and repeat. The day you least expect something to break. But it did. I was supposed to be off early. Power outage job had wrapped up by noon. I brought home sandwiches. Thought maybe Helen and I could sit outside, talk like adults, like people who still remembered why they got married. Maybe even laugh. I parked in the driveway and heard it before I reached the door. Voices. Not arguing. Not raised in anger. Laughter. Luke's voice. Noah's voice. Bouncing off the walls like they owned the air itself. I paused on the porch, key halfway into the lock. "Told you," Luke was saying, through a mouthful of smugness. It worked again. New console boomed just like that. He didn't even blink. Man, Noah replied. If he ever breaks down, Mom'll just trade him for a newer model. Bet she could get one with a pool this time. Laughter. Pure. Effortless. Not cruel in tone, casual. That's what made it worse. That's what made it true. I didn't move. Not out of fear. Not out of rage. I was still because something inside me had gone cold. Frozen. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. I was done. It was the kind of stillness that doesn't come from weakness. It comes from understanding. The final, complete understanding that you don't belong and never did. I didn't go inside. I walked back to my truck, sat in the cab, and let the silence hold me. The sandwiches sat on the passenger seat, still warm. I didn't touch them. I stared out at the street and realized I didn't feel like a husband, or a father, or even a man. I felt like a shell that had been emptied out without ever noticing. Later, Helen asked why I didn't come in. I told her I'd been feeling sick. She didn't press. She never did. That night, I waited until they were asleep. Every light was off except the one above the stove. I sat at the kitchen table, opened the drawer I always avoided, the one with the files, the bills, the receipts that tracked every dollar I had poured into this illusion. Mortgage. In my name. Electric. Gas. Water. Insurance. All mine. 2 iPhones. 2 tablets. 1 Wi-Fi plan. 1 premium gaming membership. School fees. Sports club dues. Music lessons Noah had already quit. SAT prep Luke had barely used. Thousands. Tens of thousands. Every dollar signed with my hand. I pulled it all out. Neatly. No noise. I stacked them like a man preparing for war. Not to attack. Just to walk away properly. With receipts. At the top of the stack, I placed a note. Simple. Plain. Final. If I'm just the bank, then it's time you learn to live without one. No anger. No guilt. Just the truth. The next morning, I was already dressed when Helen came into the kitchen. She blinked at the table, the papers, the note, and then at me, coffee cup in hand. What is this? I looked her in the eye, really looked, and for the first time saw her clearly. Not the woman I married, but the woman who let me disappear in my own home. It's the house, I said. The bills, the cards, everything I pay for. It's yours now. She stared, slow to comprehend. What are you talking about? You said they're just boys. That I was reading too much into it. That I needed to give it time. But time's run out. If I'm not part of the family, then I'm not responsible for funding it. Her voice cracked. Jonathan, come on. What happened? Ask your sons. They'll explain it better than I can. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I walked past her. No shouting. No drama. I went to work. I didn't cancel anything that day. I didn't need revenge. I needed clarity. So I waited. 2 days passed. Then the phone calls began. Luke first. The internet's down, he muttered. What's going on? I said nothing. Later, Helen texted, can you check the utility site? The power's off. I replied, check the account. It's not mine anymore. Then came the 3rd day. Noah, why is my phone service suspended? Me, because it's not under your name, and not under mine either. Ask your mother. Helen called that night. Not texting, calling. That was rare. You're punishing them, she said. Her voice was low, unsure, like she already knew she was losing. No, I said. I'm just taking their words seriously. If I'm not their dad, if I have no rights, then I don't have responsibilities either. They're kids. They're old enough to know what they're saying. Old enough to mock me. Old enough to know I was the one feeding them. And you let it happen. Silence. That's when she realized this wasn't a warning. This wasn't temporary. It was a withdrawal. A quiet, deliberate stepping away from a table where I was never given a seat. She didn't respond. Not right away. But the next morning, the boys were at work. Part-time jobs. Minimum wage. Barely enough to keep the lights on, let alone the lifestyle they'd gotten used to. Helen sold her car. Not her jewelry. Not the new couch she insisted on last fall. Just the car, the only thing that could be liquidated without hurting her pride. By the end of the week, the house was dark by 8. No streaming, no gaming, no long showers, no takeout deliveries. Just the sound of reality settling into the bones of a house that had forgotten what gratitude meant. And me? I slept better than I had in years. Each night, I came home and ate alone. Quietly, peacefully. No demands. No slamming doors. No muttered jokes behind my back. No pretending. I still saw them. Of course I did. I wasn't cruel. But I was done being invisible. Helen tried once, just once, to talk me down. "They're learning," she said. "They're struggling." I nodded. "Good. Good. Yes," I said, "because it's the only way they'll ever understand. You don't mock the man who pays the bills. You don't call him an ATM and expect him to stay. If I'm nothing more than a bank, then you're bankrupt now. They need time." "No," I said. "They had time. Years of it. I gave everything. I worked while you made excuses. I provided while they laughed. And now they can learn how the world treats people who bite the hand that feeds them." She looked at me like I was a stranger. But I wasn't. She was just seeing me for the first time. Luke cracked first. He came into the garage one evening, eyes down, phone off. "I didn't mean it," he said. "I was just joking." "You weren't," I replied. "I didn't think you'd actually stop." I looked at him, not with hate, but with something colder. Detachment. "That's the problem. You never thought I was real. Just a function. Just the bank. Well, the bank is closed." He nodded, swallowed hard, and left. Noah followed a day later. Less pride. More fear. "The house is cold," he said. "At night. We can't keep up with the bills." "I know," I said. Silence. "Are you going to help?" "I did," I said. "For years. You chose to spit on that. So now you live in the house you mocked." He didn't reply. He just turned away. By the end of the month, the silence wasn't mine anymore. It was theirs. No more jokes. No more ATM comments. Just a quiet awareness, a shift. The kind that only happens when consequence finally catches up to comfort. And Helen? She stopped arguing. She didn't apologize either. Just watched me from across the room like a woman realizing she had built a kingdom on sand. One night, I came home and found a note on the table. Not from the boys. From her. "We miss you. Not your money. You." I sat down and read it twice. Then I folded it and placed it under the stack of unpaid bills. Because missing me now doesn't erase the years they spent pretending I didn't exist. A week passed. Then another. The power came back for a day, then off again by morning. Helen had made a payment, probably sold something else, but it wasn't enough to keep things running. I watched from a distance as they scrambled. Luke walked to work now. Noah skipped school once or twice, probably to pick up extra shifts at the grocery store. The same store I used to drive him to, where he once rolled his eyes when I told him to say thank you to the cashier. Now he bagged groceries for kids from better homes. Kids whose fathers still paid the bills. The calls became more frequent. Luke texted me once. "Can we talk?" I didn't reply. Not out of pettiness, out of principle. I'd spoken enough. Years of quiet generosity, years of ignored kindness, wasted on ears that never listened. If he wanted to talk, he could talk to the man he believed I wasn't. Noah tried too, in his own quiet way. I came home late one night, and he was sitting on the front steps, hoodie pulled up, hands stuffed deep in his pockets. "It's cold," he said, not looking at me. "Yeah," I answered, stepping past him. Inside, I found the heat turned off again. Helen was curled on the couch, wrapped in blankets. She didn't look up when I walked in, didn't say a word, just stared at the wall like maybe there was something on it that could fix what she wouldn't. I made myself dinner, ate in silence. The boys didn't join. I didn't offer. The next day, the school called. They wanted to know if Luke's tuition payment had been delayed intentionally. I told them it was no longer my responsibility. I gave them the contact info for his biological father. There was a long pause on the line before the woman said, "Thank you, Mr. Fielding." and hung up. That night, Helen spoke. "We're drowning," she whispered. I didn't realize how much you were covering." "You didn't want to realize," I said, setting my boots by the door. "You wanted it easy. So did they. I made it easy." "They were just kids," she said. "They were old enough to understand decency. Old enough to know not to laugh at the man keeping the lights on." "They're sorry." "No," I said. "They're scared. There's a difference." She didn't argue. She knew. 3 more days passed. On the 4th, Helen called his father. The ghost. The man they all kept at a safe emotional distance, except when they needed to pretend I wasn't enough. I heard her in the bedroom. I didn't eavesdrop. I didn't need to. Her voice said it all. Shaky, desperate, rehearsed. She was trying to appeal to a man who never paid a cent into this house. A man who never patched a roof, never spent a night in the ER when Noah broke his arm, never stayed up helping Luke cram for finals. I watched her walk out after the call, face blank. She looked 10 years older. "He said he can't," she said. "He's behind on child support for his new kid." I nodded. "Figures." She blinked. "That's all you're going to say?" "I'm not surprised." She sat down across from me, her eyes dark. "They need help." "No," I said. "They need consequences." She didn't cry. Not then. She'd already done that, I'm sure, alone in the bedroom after the call. Instead, she looked at me like a stranger, and I suppose I was. Because the man she married, the one who gave, who never said no, who let her boys walk all over him in exchange for the illusion of family, that man was dead. And I was someone else now. Not cruel. Not cold. Just finished. They stopped asking after that. The boys went quiet. Not out of pride, out of shame. The Wi-Fi stayed off. The house was dark by nightfall. The fridge was half empty. Helen rationed her gas, started carpooling to work. I saw her packing lunch again. I remembered when I used to slip cash into her purse just so she wouldn't have to. Those days were over. One evening, Luke came to me. Not storming. Not angry. Just quiet. His hands were tucked in his sleeves, his voice low. "I'm sorry," he said. I looked up from the papers I was reading. "For what?" He shifted. "For everything. The jokes. The names. Acting like you were. Like you didn't matter." I set the papers down. "You treated me like a vending machine," I said. "Push the button, get what you want, then complain if the soda's the wrong flavor." He nodded. "I know. You said I wasn't your dad. You said I had no place." He swallowed. "I was an idiot." "No," I said. "You were honest. That's what makes it worse." He went silent. After a while, he asked, "Can you turn the internet back on?" "No." He blinked. "Why not?" "Because this isn't about the internet, or the heat, or your tuition. It's about respect. And you don't get comfort without it anymore." His eyes dropped to the floor. "What do I have to do?" he asked. I stood, slowly. "You have to live with it," I said. "Just like I lived with your contempt for years." I walked away, left him standing there. That was the moment the scales tipped. Not because he apologized, but because I saw that the apology wasn't a strategy anymore, it was survival. He was broken. The mask had finally cracked. But I wasn't there to fix it. Let someone else do that. I'd done my time. Noah came to me a day later. He didn't speak, just handed me a note. In his shaky handwriting, "Thank you for everything. I didn't understand. I do now." I folded it, placed it on the table, said nothing, because what could I say? Thank you doesn't refill the bank account. Gratitude doesn't buy back respect after it's been spat on. Helen stopped pretending after that. No more soft requests, no more arguments, just silence. Sometimes I caught her watching me. Not in anger, but in sadness. Like she was grieving something she didn't know she'd lost until it was gone. And maybe she was. But I didn't owe her anything anymore. Not my money. Not my silence. Not my forgiveness. I had paid in full. Now it was their turn. I packed a bag that Friday. Just a duffel. Couple of shirts, jeans, tools. I didn't leave a note. Didn't slam the door. I just walked out, got in my truck, and drove. I'd already signed the lease. A lake house. Small. Quiet. Mine. The kind of place where the only noise came from the water against the dock and the wind through the pines. No boys slamming doors. No laughter at my expense. No woman asking for just a little more patience. Just quiet. Pure, unfiltered quiet. The first night, I sat on the porch, a beer in hand, and watched the moon ripple across the surface of the lake. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel used. I felt clean, whole, respected not by anyone else but by myself. They would adjust, or they wouldn't. They would find new ways to survive, or they'd fall apart. Either way, it wasn't my burden anymore. The house I left behind was no longer my responsibility. I had given them everything, and in return, I had been treated like a stranger, a machine. Now they would learn what it meant to lose the current, to lose the warmth, to lose the man they never saw. Let them fumble in the dark. Let them feel the cold. Maybe then they'd understand. Maybe then they'd grow. But not on my back. Not anymore. It's been 5 months. The lake house has settled into my bones like it always belonged there. Wood creaks when it breathes, and the windows sweat in the early morning like the place is still learning how to exhale. The silence is complete, unbroken. At night, I fall asleep to the soft slap of water against the dock and the creaking bones of the old pines that line the shore. Nobody here calls me anything. Not ATM. Not mom's boyfriend. Not even dad. And somehow that's still better. I wake early. Make my own coffee. Fix what needs fixing. Read the paper on the porch while the wind plays with the corners. I spend my weekends rewiring this place. Old switches, cracked sockets, exposed insulation. It's work I understand. Work that doesn't lie. No one here laughs behind a door when I give. No one here expects anything. And that, strangely, feels like peace. Helen's number is still in my phone. I haven't blocked it. I don't need to. She only calls once a month now, like she's checking in on something she once lost but hasn't quite given up hoping she can reclaim. I don't pick up. She leaves voicemails. Small ones. Apologies without shape. Questions left hanging like ropes with no knots. I just thought maybe you'd want to know. Noah got his first paycheck. Luke applied to community college. We're doing better now. I never respond. Not because I hate them. I don't. But because I don't owe them another minute of my life. They had years. Years to see me. To value me. To recognize that I was not some extension of a bank account but a man. Flawed, sure, but steady. Honest. Present. The kind of man their real father never bothered to be. The kind of man they threw away like a used receipt. That kind of rejection doesn't get a second chance. The last time Helen called, it was Luke's voice that came through. He sounded older. Worn. Real. Hey, I know you don't want to talk to us. I get it. I wanted to say thanks. Not for the money. For everything. I didn't know how hard you worked. I didn't know what you were carrying. I was a jerk. I was worse than a jerk. And I'm sorry. I listened. Then I deleted the message. Not out of spite. Out of self-preservation. Because I've learned that apologies often come too late. Not in the clock sense, in the soul sense. Once a man's been hollowed out by neglect, by contempt, by silence, it doesn't matter how many sorries you pour in. The echo just bounces off the emptiness. They say time heals everything. It doesn't. Time reveals. It shows you what was always true. Under the smiles, under the routines, under the words that never matched the actions. The truth? I was never their family. I was a service. Convenience, a name on the bill and a hand on the wallet. I don't blame the boys entirely. They were raised to believe that love doesn't come with respect, that provision is something to be expected, not cherished. But they weren't the only ones. Helen let it happen. Her silence was louder than their words. When Luke called me Mom's ATM, she said nothing. When Noah joked about replacing me, she turned away. When they denied me with their eyes, she didn't meet mine. That silence cost more than the mortgage. Cost the only thing I ever really wanted. A seat at the table, not as a financier but as a man who mattered. Now I live alone. And I've learned that solitude is not the enemy. The enemy is pretending. Pretending you're part of something when you're not. Pretending that love exists where only transaction lives. Pretending that one more sacrifice will finally open the door. It won't. Sometimes the only way to be seen is to disappear. And that's what I did. They learned to survive. Eventually, I'm sure they'll thrive. People adapt. They figure it out when the heat goes cold and the lights stay off. It's amazing what a man becomes when no one comes to save him. I know. I've been there. Luke got a job at a warehouse. Not glamorous, but steady. I hear from mutual friends he's taking classes at night. He might make something of himself yet. But not on my dime. Not on my back. Noah's selling refurbished laptops online. Has a decent little operation going, from what I gather. Maybe now he understands what it costs to build something. Maybe now he doesn't laugh when someone hands him money. As for Helen, she's quieter now. Still working. Still holding that house together with duct tape and duty. Maybe she remembers the way I used to fix the broken railing without being asked. Maybe she misses the sound of boots by the door at the end of the day. Or maybe she just misses not having to carry everything alone. But that's her burden now. Mine is gone. I don't wake up wondering how to be better for people who don't want me. I don't sit in rooms waiting to be acknowledged. I don't hand over my time, my effort, my soul in exchange for nothing. I wake up knowing exactly who I am. And more importantly, who I'm not. I'm not their father. I'm not their doormat. I'm not their wallet. I'm not a second-rate placeholder for a man who couldn't even show up. I am Jonathan Fielding, electrician, man, human being. I gave everything, and when that wasn't enough, I left. Not out of rage, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. And that's the one thing they couldn't take. So now I ask you, whoever you are, whatever chair you're sitting in while you read this, as a father, a husband, a man carrying someone else's name on his shoulders, would you have stayed? Would you have kept paying when your voice carried no weight? Would you have watched your sacrifices mocked, your role erased, your effort dismissed, and stayed for more? Or would you have walked out like I did? Would you have left the lights off so they could finally see? Because that's the thing no one tells you. Sometimes it takes darkness for people to find the switch.